Welcome to a special bonus episode of Superhero Cinema Club. We're here with our first reactions to James Gunn's Superman. We'll be talking about the film in broad strokes as well as getting into spoilers. My name is Mark Schiff, and joining me as always, it's the crypto to my Superman, Mike Carnes.
Hey, bringing it back to the first episode because I'm your dog.
Full circle, Mike.
All right.
It's a fur circle moment.
Oh, I see what you did there.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's all right. Crypto was cool, man. I liked him. He was kind of the highlight of the movie.
Crypto was great. We'll be talking about Crypto. We'll be talking about the other actors. We'll be going through our best action scene, all of our topics, death and destruction. We have a new topic for this episode, good guy and bad guy, our favorite supporting characters and least favorite. A little bit of everything on this one. We're going to start with where we normally end, which is our final verdict. We rate on a scale of classic, great, good, okay, bad, and terrible. Mike, you and I discussed this briefly. I think it's really hard to call a movie classic right away because classics kind of emerge over time. So I think we can just take that off the table here. I'd love to hear your thoughts first off, because I know in the past you and I have had some disagreements about the film's director, James Gunn. I am a very big fan of almost all of his films, and I know you kind of struggled with some of his work in the past. So why don't you kick us off, Mike? What is your final verdict? I guess this would actually be like preliminary verdict. So why don't you start us off? What did you think about Superman?
Yeah, before we dive right in, I do want to just let the listeners know right off the bat that we will save our spoiler talk for the second half of the podcast, and there will be a audio cue warning to indicate when that will begin. So no worries, we will not be spoiling anything right out the gate until we reach probably about the halfway mark of this podcast. So no problem there. My verdict, Mark, and I think you may be shocked to hear this. I thought this movie was quite good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I was definitely thoroughly entertained in the theater. I thought this was the best movie that James Gunn has done in terms of just like humor. I thought all the humor worked really well. Normally his humor does not work for me, and I feel that it's very, quite frankly, juvenile and falls pretty flat on screen. And this time I was chuckling quite a bit throughout the movie. I don't know if you heard me sitting next to you there in the theater chuckling to myself. Yeah.
I did.
So
I heard it.
I had a great time, and think on retrospect, Christopher Reeve Superman movies, they did, at least the first two, they did a great job of capturing the feel of the golden age of comics, back from the 40s and 50s and 60s and even into the 70s. And I think that this movie captured the feel of the last 20 years of comics pretty well. It felt like a genuine superhero kind of team up movie with all the other characters that we'll get into, and just their dynamics between each other and the dialogues that they have, and yeah, just the way they interact with each other. So I think it's not great. There's definitely some things that I had some problems with that we can get into later, but overall I'm going to go with a good rating on this.
Okay. We're getting a good from Mike. Well, Mike, this may not surprise you to hear as someone who is a James Gunn fan. I think perhaps my initial rating is colored in part by sitting through the last few Superman movies from our first season, all of which were bad to terrible. Mike, I thought this movie was great, and I think that it actually, for me, does have the potential to elevate to the classic tier down the line. Mike, let me just run a little thought experiment past you real quick, because
Okay,
I really
shoot.
thought very hard about this today. And I think we should start by saying where we think this fits in the ratings of the Superman films we've already discussed. So if you didn't listen to the end of our final episode on Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, our final rankings from the first season between the 70s and 80s films, as well as Superman Returns and the spin-off Supergirl, was Superman the original at the top, then Superman 2, Superman Returns, Superman 3, Supergirl, and finally Superman 4 Quest for Peace. I think most fans would probably agree with us. Superman 2, I do like quite a bit. I liked it more than the original, but I also see how the original's influence is monumental in the genre, and therefore it sits in the highest echelon. Mike, where would you place this new Superman among those rankings?
My initial reaction after seeing it and walking out of the theater, that was something I was trying to think about. I think somewhere probably between two and Superman Returns. So it might take the number three spot in our rankings off of the initial viewing. I need a little more time to digest it, consume it, absorb it. Definitely want to see it again at home. We watched it in the IMAX theater last night, which was a great experience, and seeing it in IMAX definitely contributed to the fun as it always does for those types of movies. But I think right off the bat here, I'm probably going to say it's taken number three and it's pushing the Brandon Ruth Superman Returns down a peg and taking that spot.
Yeah, I think that's right for me as well. What's difficult about judging this in the context of the original two Superman films is that those two were so influential on this genre and have become such a part of the firmament of superhero cinema that it's just difficult to imagine a world without those. And so similar, I was thinking similar to Star Wars, right? Where there's definitely other Star Wars films that maybe you like more than the original and other Star Wars spin-off that might be your favorite, but it's kind of just hard to divorce anything from the 1977 original. I think the Christopher Reeve original Superman is just such a monumental achievement in the genre that it's really hard to say that this is the best. That being said, I was looking at it today. I feel very confident in declaring this is the best DC live action comic book film since The Dark Knight in 2008. Mike, I put together a list of all of them, and there are a couple qualifiers here. I think we have to take out the Lego Batman movie since that was an animated film, along with
Okay.
DC Super Pets, which probably wouldn't have made the rankings. But I highlighted what I think the contenders are here. And why don't you just tell me to just hear you say if you think it's better or worse? Okay. These are, to
All
me,
right.
the top tier ones. The Dark Knight Rises. Is this better or worse?
I didn't know this was going to be such a hard exercise right out the gate.
This is what we
Whew.
do. Come on. Put it out there.
Worse.
Strong disagree. This is better.
I mean, there are things about, we can get into this later, but there are things about Dark Knight Rises that I absolutely love. Bane is number one at the top of that list. He's one of the strongest villains in DC canon, any DC movie, and I don't think this version of Lex is that strong. So
Okay,
just
we're
for
gonna
a
well,
villain
okay,
standpoint alone.
we're gonna get into this then. All right.
Okay,
Wonder Woman, better or worse?
better,
Aquaman, better or worse?
better.
Shazam, better or worse?
The first one,
First one.
maybe about equal. I really like the first Shazam a lot.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Joker's a tough one because I think we should throw out Joker. We will discuss it eventually, but it's just such a unique
better.
film. This is better than Joker?
Yeah,
Okay. Zack Snyder's Justice League.
worse,
The Suicide Squad. The James Gunn one.
better. To
The
clarify,
Bat
I'm saying that this is a much better movie than that movie.
the Batman.
Maybe equal. If I can add a third option, I would probably put this on par with that.
The Flash.
This is better.
Okay, for me, I think that Superman is better than every one of those films I just mentioned. So I am confident in declaring this is the best DC live action superhero film since The Dark Knight. Now, I think we could broaden the aperture a little bit and go with some late cut Marvel films post Endgame.
Ooh, okay. Spicy.
I think there's a case this is the best superhero film since Endgame. I'll give you a list. Shang-Chi, is Superman better or worse?
This is better than Shang-Chi. Yeah.
Spider-Man No Way Home, better or worse?
No Way Home is the one with all the other Spider-Man in
Correct.
it. Whew. That's a good movie. I may have to think about this one for a little bit. I'm gonna go with on par for right now.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3,
This is better than that for sure.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
This is my initial instinct is that this is better than that. I will say I really liked Deadpool and Wolverine in the theater, and then on rewatch, there's a lot about that movie that I don't like. So I'm waiting to watch this again to see if I have a similar experience. But my initial reaction is that this is better than that.
Thunderbolts.
I'm gonna go with the on par metric again.
Okay. I think I was curious to get your thoughts with these specific comps because, again, I personally feel confident in saying this is the best Superman film of the 21st century. I am very big on this film. I loved it. And I think this leads into our next discussion point. Mike, did this get you excited for the new DC universe that James Gunn is launching?
Yeah, I would say so. It depends on what they do. I've heard rumors about them maybe trying to utilize the Robert Pattinson Batman in this universe. I don't know if that's the case or not. Do you know anything about that? You don't.
No, I don't believe they're planning on incorporating him into this universe.
Okay. So we'll see what happens with Batman then. But I think that this movie sets up, it already begins in the midst of a world that is built. And they have a lot of room that they've given themselves to play around with for prequels, sequels, spin-off movies, one-off movies, that explain whatever big bad that may introduce for this next 5 or 6 movies, as it were. They did it quite well in that respect. So I would say, yeah, it's definitely got me hopeful for the future of this DC universe.
Yeah, I am very excited after seeing this. I think we'll talk about it more in the spoiler section specifically, but I think they did an amazing job of ushering in a new era for DC Comics and specifically one that is not completely dark and dour and overly serious as we saw in the DC EU.
The
I think
Snyderverse.
the Snyderverse, if you will. I think that this really captured the spirit of Superman exceptionally well in terms of portraying a character who his goodness is one of his defining qualities. I think that's something that we both really liked about the way Christopher Reeve played the character. You always felt like there was a strong moral center to his
Hmm.
Superman, and I felt that way here. That will lead us into some comps from those movies in terms of the actors and performances. So let's just focus primarily initially here before we get into spoilers on the big three. That would be Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, and Superman. So let's start with Lois Lane. Mike, did you find her better or worse? That would be Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, better or worse than Margot Kidder?
I said it to you in the theater, and I stand by it. There was a specific point in the movie where they very smartly wrote her a scene where she is a hard-hitting investigative reporter, and she played it amazingly well. I actually thought that she channeled a lot of Margot Kidder's energy quite well. It felt like a good continuation of that performance. But during that scene, I leaned over to you and I said, she's the best Lois Lane. And I stand by that. She is absolutely the best performance of Lois Lane that I think we've seen on screen.
This one's tough for me because I really like Margot Kidder a lot. I love the energy she brought, especially to the first film. I'm going to go with you and say tie. I think she's equal. The way this character is written is very strong minded journalist in the sense of looking at the big picture of things. She doesn't let Superman off the hook during her interview.
Yeah, it's in the
And
trailer there.
yeah, this is no spoiler
She's
if you've seen the trailers.
she's very much in his face and asking hard questions, and I really appreciated that as opposed to the Margot Kidder interviews that we see where she's basically swooning over him and not really even paying attention to her tape recorder or anything like that. She's just like lost in Christopher Reeve's eyes as she's performing this interview. That is not the case in this interview. She is there for answers, and I thought that that scene was amazingly well written.
Let's move on to Lex Luthor, as played by Nicholas Hoult. Better or worse than Gene Hackman or Kevin Spacey?
You're gonna hate me. Worse. I know. I have a lot to say about this.
Okay, we're
Ladies and
yeah,
gentlemen, the look on Mark's face is he's utterly flabbergasted right now.
completely shocked because Mike, I think not only did he snatch the ring as I hoped he might, I think he is clearly the best version of Lex Luthor that we've seen on screen. And in fact, probably better even than Michael Rosenbaum in Smallville, which I know Nicholas Hoult kind of drew some inspiration from. I thought he was a fantastic character. I love the way he was written. I thought he was the essence of the comic book character, which is something we discussed. Lex kind of being comic relief, I think, as played by Gene Hackman, and then just a little bit ineffectual by Kevin Spacey. He's menacing at times, but he's not like pure evil. This Lex Luthor is basically exactly like I would imagine the comic book Lex Luthor would be come to life. I loved his performance, and I thought he was absolutely one of the highlights of the film.
I agree that his character was written just like how he should be in the comics. It's a good portrait of the Lex Luthor character for sure. As much as I love Nicholas Hoult, and believe me, I love this guy. I've been a huge fan of him. He's an incredible actor. Mad Max Fury Road. He's great in the X-Men movies. I just felt like his performance was just kind of flat, kind of atonal through it. Again, this is just a initial reaction on the first watch. Don't shake your head at me. But
Yeah, we disagree strongly on this one, I think.
and that's fine. But I kind of felt I wasn't menaced the way that I was with Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey brought certain something to that role that was, he's obviously intelligent. He was obviously intense and evil, and I didn't quite feel it with Nicholas Hoult. And when I say he's worse than Kevin Spacey, I'm not saying that he's like way down below in the bottom of the barrel. He's a close second to Kevin Spacey, I think. So I do want to qualify with that. But I would still say Spacey reigns supreme in this role.
Okay. And last up, Superman. This is the big one. David Corn Sweat, which I don't think very many people knew much about this guy. I know I didn't. I'm not sure what all he starred in. I think a couple streaming shows, but this is really my first time seeing him outside of a small supporting role in the film Pearl. Mike, where does he fit? I think it's safe to say like Christopher Reeve is always going to kind of be the definitive Superman, so it's almost like we can't really include him. So let's go ahead and throw Cavill in there. Where does he fit among the other three actors who have played Superman?
I would say he's better than Ruth. He is a bit more likable and charismatic than Brandon Ruth. I really liked the way that they kind of portrayed his like oh golly persona. He never swears despite the other characters around him swearing in this movie. He's like, oh geez, oh golly, oh darn, which is pretty endearing if you know the character and know what you're getting into. I mean, come on, Superman, he's the big blue Boy Scout. That's exactly what we want. So they definitely wrote him well in that respect, and he played it very charmingly. Of course, yeah, he's not gonna touch Christopher Reeve. There's no way. First of all, he's not given as much to do as Clark Kent. He has a lot to do as Superman, but we clocked it in the parking lot. I think after the movie, he has two scenes as Clark, possibly, maybe three if we stretch it a little bit. But Henry Cavill is great as Superman, but not great as Clark. They don't even bother giving him a Clark, and I really feel like in order to rank this actor, you have to rank him with the goods and the bads of both because he's playing two roles. He's playing both characters. So having said all that, my initial reaction is that yes, he is definitely more charismatic and a better performance than Henry Cavill was. However, I will say he doesn't look as, buff or as fit as Cavill did in the suit, and I think that's kind of the suit's fault. I was thinking about this a little bit. His suit is very thick and like heavy on the fabric, and I know that he's my height. He's 6'4". I know he put on like 50 pounds of sheer muscle basically. He went from 190 to 240, and you can't tell that he's ripped underneath that suit. It's really kind of hard to say from a physical aspect how well that he fits the role of Superman there. Unfortunately, the suit took that away from him a little bit. But yeah, I'd give him the number two belt for right now.
Yeah, I think he for sure has the second best performance after Christopher Reeve. I thought that his take on the character was very humane and had that sense of goodness. I keep using that word, but I think that's really important for this character. Part of that is the writing, but I think he was able to pull it off as well. We can maybe talk more about his story arc when we get into the spoiler section, but I thought Corin Sweat did a great job in this, and that was really excellent casting on James Gunn's part to get someone that wasn't very well known to step into this role. I think he found the right guy for it. Now, you just brought up a point about the suit. I think that's very much worth discussing. What did you think? I'm actually pretty similar to you on that. I thought that it looks kind of padded at times. It almost looked like they were trying to like add some musculature through padding initially. That being said, it was sort of odd. I felt that by the final sequence in the film, it had really grown on me. I liked the collar that they gave him, and I liked how the cape was kind of velvety and tucked into the collar. There were some design choices that I liked. I thought kind of in general it was a little puffy. Watching a clip of the Cavill version, that one was like just pretty ugly. I still feel, as I said in our podcast, I think the Superman Returns costume, that was kind of almost a teal and a maroon, is probably my favorite. This one doesn't quite go there, but yeah, the suit grew on me over the course of the film. That was kind of my takeaway there.
I like the collar too. I like the symbol that they did. It's almost very Injustice, if you know that storyline. It's just like the angular S on his chest, and it's like I said, it's padded. You use the word puffy. I think that's very apt. It looks like a heavy sweater almost is what he's wearing to times, and I know that traditionally the red trunks on the outside of the suit is what we're going for, and I appreciate that, but it looked almost too high-waisted on him, like an old man pulling on a pair of trousers a little bit. Got the underwear sticking on the top above his belly button. I think they could have maybe reworked that a little bit, but that's kind of nitpicking a bit, I believe. So I'm not going to dock him points for anything like that. But yeah, it's a good suit. There's things about it that I like. The collar it's a good look. I like the collar a lot.
Well, Mike, I think we've kind of reached the point of our discussion where we need to start getting into specifics here. So if you haven't seen Superman and you don't want it to be spoiled for you, go ahead and stop the podcast now and come back, listen to the rest after you've seen it. For the rest of you, we'll see you on the other side of the spoiler warning.
Spoiler alert! This episode contains major plot details. If you wish to avoid spoilers, please pause now.
All right, Mike, let's just briefly kind of go through the plot a little bit. And one of the things I liked the most about this was I thought the world building was excellent. And the opening crawl that says it's been 300 years since the first metahumans, I thought that was very intriguing immediately. I'm wondering to myself, who was it back in 1725 that made his first appearance and alerted the world to metahumans? But just that general idea of a world where metahumans exist and they're commonplace, I thought was one of the best story choices they could have made for this film, because I love the scenes where there's this giant kaiju battle going on and the woman at the Daily Planet is just gabbing gossip to Lois Lane like this is nothing. They don't even care about it. And the other scene where Clark and Lois are talking and there's a giant alien weird globe kind of thing going on and it's just literally in the background and the Justice Gang is out there battling and it's like completely incidental. This is just commonplace to the world. I thought that was an amazing story choice that really paid off in the film's tone.
It was really smart on a couple of levels. First of all, it gives them so much room. I mentioned this at the beginning, but so much room to do whatever they want. Like you said, who's the first hero 300 years ago that reveals himself to the world? But now we have literally hundreds of years of time to do whatever we want. We can play with this time frame and insert as many movies as we could possibly dream of into this universe that he's built out. So starting in this place was really smart for them. And also, we've completely skipped his origin story, and I think that that was really smart. They kind of did the Spider-Man in the MCU treatment a little bit, where it's like everybody knows Spider-Man's backstory, everybody knows Superman's backstory. We don't need to see that again in a reboot. So let's just skip past that. We're basically in like year two or year three of his career, and we're starting at his first loss, which was also pretty intriguing, I thought. Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, it was really smart of them to do that, I think. And like you said, it's good world building, and yeah, it's all these meta-human events and monster attacks are very commonplace at this point, as it would be.
You just brought up a couple things that I really liked as well. I think the Spider-Man comp is spot on. I think that similar to Spider-Man, kind of remixing some elements around his mythology. I thought this movie did some really cool stuff with that. Specifically, the fact that Pa Kent, as he's called, Jonathan Kent, is still alive was genuinely surprising. And I fully expected him to die of a heart attack or something when they went back to Smallville. So relieved that they didn't do that. And I thought that was a great story choice and that he really, the actor was great in that role. I love that they cast just kind of normal looking people to play his parents. I love that the farm itself was really modest and small. It just, we live in Denver. We go to a lot of rural towns and in the mountains. And obviously, we're not Kansas, but we're one state over. I mean, we know kind of the town look of that plain. I thought they did a great job capturing that. So I thought the sort of remix choices, also the Fortress of Solitude being in Antarctica rather than the North Pole. I don't know if that's canon or not, if they ever like specify where he is, but I thought that was a cool choice. Just some really cool kind of remix choices they did there. So I think another thing that really stood out to me about making this film exceptional was the writing. I thought the writing was really strong, not only in terms of the plot and the events of the story, but also the humor. You mentioned it in your opening, but I thought the jokes worked throughout. Obviously, I'm a little more inclined towards James Gunn's sense of humor than you are, but I thought it was consistently funny. It does kind of have that similar quippiness that Marvel films are known for to a certain extent, but I think ultimately when the jokes land and they pretty much all landed for me, I'd like to have a little bit of humor mixed in with my comic book storytelling. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all, and it was very funny movie throughout. I really liked all the jokes.
There's a lot of dog humor, and as a dog owner, I can definitely relate to all of that. Crypto is pretty funny throughout the entire movie. Pretty much every scene that he's in is played for a laugh. If anything happens to that dear dog, I would have probably lost my shit. So thank you, James Gunn, for again, we're in spoiler territory, so no problem saying this, for not getting rid of Crypto in the first movie.
Yeah, and in fact, it appears that we'll be seeing him again in Supergirl because that speaks to the writing as well, where all the little things that he sets up pay off, including is that your dog? Oh, kinda. It's kind of a tossed off line. And then at the end, drunken Supergirl, who I am frankly very excited to meet after meeting boring 80s Supergirl. I'm really, really stoked to see what her character is going to be like. But yeah, Crypto even has his own little story arc. And then, at the end of the movie, Lex Luthor's monologuing, and Crypto just attacks him and just takes him to town. I thought it was great. Very kind of similar to the Hulk scene from Avengers, which obviously it was great. But yeah, I mean, even the dog gets a great story arc. That kind of leads into another thing I thought. The supporting characters throughout were uniformly fantastic. Loved the Justice Gang and the fact that they were sponsored by Lord Corp or whatever it was, the guy at the very end. That added a touch of, again, realism of the world building where superheroes are so commonplace that they have corporate sponsorships like basketball teams or other big groups might. I thought all of the extra characters were great. I really found that awesome. We'll talk a little bit more about the supporting characters in a moment, but what were your thoughts on them?
Yeah. By the way, did you clock who Supergirl is played by?
I can never remember her name, but I know she's from the House of Dragon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She plays the lead from the early teen years of the House of the Dragon, yeah. Which I thought she looked great in the costume. It's a good fit. So we'll see what
Totally.
they do with her. Yeah, it was the supporting cast was pretty great overall. I really liked Mr. Terrific and Guy Gardner, and I was pretty worried about that. The opening or the first trailer that we saw had me a little worried because it was like every shot of the trailer was a different character, and I thought that they might be cramming in too many characters into a single movie, kind of like Spider-Man 3 syndrome a little bit. But it fit really well. It fit really well in the world. Of course, there would be a team that would be sponsored. Mr. Terrific's jacket is prime real estate for advertising there, like a NASCAR almost. You could throw a lot of bumper stickers on that jacket and it would feel right at home. Everybody worked really well. I was really surprised at how much I ended up liking all these additional characters. I learned a lot about Mr. Terrific. I've definitely seen his face before with that black tee kind of painted on the middle of his face, and I had a very specific image of Alex Ross's Mr. Terrific that he's painted in a lot of his comics. But I didn't really know much about his character and what his power set was and what he could do, and I learned a lot about that. Nathan Fillion played an amazing Guy Gardner. He also is there for a lot of comic relief, and it works really well. He's very much a douchebag kind of character that you kind of love to hate in a way, and he plays it to the T. And I would say Hawk Girl is probably the one that I could do without. You could probably delete her from the script entirely, and it wouldn't change the movie at all. But yeah, these additional characters were quite surprising to me at how much that I ended up liking them.
She probably has the least amount of screen time and the least to do, but I thought she did a good job and she looked great in the costume. I actually really liked her look as a character too. That's one thing I definitely wanted to bring up was if you're a massive fan of the DC comics, which I am far more into Marvel comics than DC. I know most, I would say, Marvel comic characters, or at least the major ones. I've read a lot of those books. I'm definitely not as familiar with DC, but if you are, this movie is going to be really rewarding. And I actually think it goes back to something we discussed on our initial podcast, which is how much does this make you want to read the comics? I think this film scores really high on that category because of the new characters they introduce and again the world building. There's lots of villains and different characters. I'm sure people will be picking apart the Easter eggs from the Pocket universe of the various characters that are being held there. I thought those were all great. A couple small minimum criticisms, I would say. I did feel that the rest of the Daily Planet crew was underdeveloped, in particular, Perry White, the editor in chief. He really only has a couple scenes. I really like Wendell Pierce a lot as an actor. I kind of wish there was just a bigger role for him because he really doesn't have much to do at all. What do you think about Jimmy Olsen? I think this is going to be one of the more controversial decisions of the film. His story arc. I thought it was quite funny. You know that Eve is Miss Tessmacher, right? Okay, yeah.
I
So
did,
they
yeah.
never. I don't think they ever say Tessmacher in the movie, but yeah. So it's
No, but
Eve
they call her
Tessmacher.
Eve, and I think in the
hmm
credits her last name is listed as well.
Yeah, she's obsessed with him apparently, and she's a psycho ex girlfriend of his. I think again, I could see this being a little bit divisive, but it worked for me. I thought it was funny. What were your thoughts?
I think circumstantially it was funny and I appreciated it, but that actor and the way that he played Jimmy, I mean, that's kind of a hashtag not my Jimmy in a way. I still really love Superman Returns Jimmy Olsen. I think that he is 100% the spiritual embodiment of Jimmy Olsen as a character. And this guy is just kind of like, he's kind of a douchebag in a way, it's like I understand that you are hesitant towards this beautiful woman that's obsessed with you and because she's kind of crazy, but what's happening is funny, but I didn't really connect with him as a character. I thought that we've seen better versions of Jimmy. Jimmy's like Superman's pal. He's very sweet. He's very innocent, like Superman. And I didn't get that feeling from him as all. It's fine if they want to change the character, but I just didn't connect with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think overall he was a little underwritten. Yeah, and I think the Superman Returns guy is the best. But yeah, again, it was just another clever remix of her being sort of in love with him rather than Superman. I thought that was another clever remix touch. All right, Mike, let's talk briefly about Secret Layers. Very interesting and unique Fortress of Solitude in this one. What were your thoughts?
I thought the Fortress of Solitude was pretty sick. I really liked how it moved and came up out of the ground and went receded back down into the ground when it needed to go into hiding. I loved the magnifying glass that supercharged him and gave him a burst of energy there to heal him back up after combat. I thought that that was a great touch. I loved all the robots in it. They looked amazing. I feel like I've seen that in it might be All Star Superman that they appear in, so that they took directly from the comics for that. Yeah, I absolutely love the Force of Solitude in this one. I thought it was a great iteration. It felt like it was a bit more comfortable than versions we've seen before. Yeah, I think we talked about it in Superman 2, where it was like it's very angular and very geometric, and it doesn't seem that comfortable of a place to be in, even though it does seem very alien to be in. This feels a bit more of like a place that you could actually like hang out and kick back with Superman and just kind of chill if you wanted to.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I liked it a lot. And it felt like a true secret layer. I think one of the things we kind of joked about in Superman 2 was like, it's just off the side of the highway. He just walks over to it while hitchhiking. This one was secret. It was hidden. I like that his DNA was, required to get in. And I thought that was a good little mystery that they set up that Lex could just get in immediately, like no problem. I like the robots quite a bit, and it was fun to see Kara just come crashing through at the end. I thought that was a cool little choice. We haven't spoken on them yet. Bradley Cooper as Jor-El, obviously kind of a bit cameo, but that was really one of the biggest remix elements of the film. His parents telling him this is a weak planet that you should be able to conquer. I don't think I've ever seen that in the comics. Is that taken from the comics? I'm not sure, but I thought it was a very
Yeah.
it was taken from a comic. Okay, because I thought that was a very interesting story arc and a very interesting way to present him as to create some doubt about who he is and what his role is here on Earth.
Yeah, I mentioned briefly at the end of the Supergirl podcast that we did, I recommended the HBO Max TV show My Adventures with Superman. And I think it feels like they took a bit from that with them speaking Kryptonian. And in that show, Clark doesn't even understand what they're saying because he doesn't speak Kryptonian. He just speaks English. So there was a bit of mystery there. So that felt like they were taking directly from that for me. And I liked that aspect. I think there's a bit of Superman birthright there, which I talked about before, but part of that storyline goes into Lex is kind of manipulating the public into that Kryptonians are here to overthrow us. And Birthright goes into that, and so they brought that into the story a bit. So they kind of combined a couple different stories here. Did they resolve what actually is said at the end of the message? Was it something that Lex had fabricated, or was it actually did his parents end up was that the truth? Were they speaking that?
Yeah, I took it that that was an authentic translation. Mr. Terrific says to him at one point, I know these linguists, they're legit. They're not making it up. So I did actually take it. And my initial suspicion was that, yeah, he was just lying like he does and making it up. But it did seem to be authenticated through Mr. Terrific's comments. So I'm assuming
Okay.
that is what they said. So, yeah, it was a very interesting story choice. Obviously, radically different from what he hears from Jor-El in Superman, which is you can be their savior, you can be their Christ-like figure. Here, it's definitely inverted, and I thought that was a very cool story choice. With that, let's move on to our categories here, and let's talk best action scene, Mike. Obviously, we just saw this movie once, so this isn't as thorough as perhaps it could be. But we've got four categories here. We'll start with the opening fight against the Helmet. I thought this was sick. One of the things I really liked about Lex Luthor, and now that we're in spoiler territory, maybe this is a good opportunity to talk a little bit more about his character and what your concerns were. But the fact that he's basically remote operating this guy to fight Superman and that he knows the moves that will win, I thought was a really cool story choice. It showed how intelligent he is, how observant he is. The idea that if only he had a super metahuman powered body, he might actually be a formidable foe to Superman. I thought was really compelling. That was a really cool ripple, in my opinion.
Was it the helmet? I thought his name was the Hammer of Bolivia or whatever the country was. It's not the case.
You are
Semantics, I know.
no. You are 100% right. This is where my ignorance towards some of the mythology comes in. It is the Hammer of Baravia. So
Moravia, yeah. A fictional country, I believe.
I don't believe that's in the world map, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I enjoyed the fight. Kind of, I was thinking while it was happening, I was like, oh, this dude is a robot because Lex is so quickly calling out the commands for him to do that it would have to be someone programmed with the same knowledge as him to pick up on it. And then we find out later it's not a robot. He's in fact a clone of Superman, which I can't believe I didn't see it right away because they show you that he has the same powers as Superman. He can use his heat vision and he uses it to try and destroy a building. He can fly. He's super strong. And then they call him Ultraman, which is the alternate name of evil Superman from another dimension in certain storylines that have come into play. So I felt kind of dumb for not picking up on that right away. So good on them for bringing those elements in from other comic storylines and still bringing it in a fresh way. But I will say, as cool as it is, this is one of the problems I had. I liked that Lex was smart enough to even plan out and choreograph his fight, but he's doing it with a person who he says later is even dumber than he is, even dumber than Superman is. So that guy also memorized a combination of 20,000 fight sequences. I didn't understand that. Like, Lex is smart enough to do that, I understand, but this guy that he's clearly called out as being dumb, he can also do it, apparently.
I think to me, it just Lex Luthor just thinks he's the smartest man, and he holds literally every other human being in contempt. He's envious. He's contemptuous. He's not that dumb if he can memorize all those fight moves. He obviously didn't seem like intelligent like Superman, but yeah, I think it was more about illustrating Lex's arrogance than it was about showing that this character himself was actually stupid. Next fight scene, the kaiju battle. Loved it, bud. Absolutely loved it. I thought it was a great start with this little monster coming out, and then the next day it's grown to the size of a skyscraper. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think this was my favorite fight sequence. I thought the humor with the Justice Gang was great. I thought it was really cool use of Guy Gardner's powers, putting the oven mitts on him. That was a very funny little joke. Yeah, and I think the shot of Superman saving the little girl, which has been in the trailers of all those pipes, is to me instantly iconic. That is one of the images now that I will always conjure to mind when I think of this character on film. Really, really cool shot using his body to shield her. And then he saves a freaking squirrel. even Mike. He
I'm glad you call
even
it out.
I thought that was this is how good Superman is. He won't even let a little squirrel get squashed. He has to save all the creatures. He does kick a dog, but he's saving the dog's life, so I think that
He
counts.
didn't kick it. No, no, no. He uses
Oh,
his
what am I
super
saying?
breath to blow it away. Yeah,
That,
because the dog will
yes,
not leave.
I'm sorry. I got this mixed up with the dog hating Superman Returns, as you called out. But yeah, I mean, I just really, I really enjoyed this sequence. I thought it was a great battle. I thought the kaiju was super cool. I like kaiju monsters. It was a really fun one for me.
I'm gonna agree with you that this is the best action scene in the movie. It's a great showcase of everyone's powers. It's a great opportunity for newcomers to learn about who these additional characters are. You may know Green Lantern, you don't know Guy Gardner's Green Lantern. He's kind of different, you know. He's like I said, he's a bit of a douchebag, and for us to learn what he does with his powers is a little different than what maybe Hal Jordan would do. There's a sequence later where he specifically makes a bunch of middle finger fists going up. That's not something Hal Jordan would do. That's something Guy Gardner would do. And we see Mr. Terrific analyzing the beast and learning a weakness and literally kind of the guy in the chair, but he's out in the field. He's on the scene with them. So I really liked that they showcased everyone's different powers. And then, of course, Hawk Girl, she's got a mace. She hits the beast in the eye. That's really all she is capable of doing. So, yeah, again, I would delete her from the script. But yeah, this was the most fun I think the movie is having it in the moment. And I think this is the best action scene.
I like too that Superman wanted to save even the monster to study it. He didn't want to kill it, despite the fact that it's clearly a major menace to Metropolis. I thought that spoke a lot about his character. It was great.
Yeah.
The next one, the escape from the pocket universe. Loved it too, man. Great sequence. Always cool when there's a superhero who is holding something so they not only have to do battle, but they also have to protect as they fight. I thought it was a great sequence. I love the Metamorpho losing basically his entire body except for his head. Great character, by the way. Metamorpho was amazing.
That's
Um,
his name, is Metamorpho.
yeah, Metamorpho. Really enjoyed Metamorpho as a character. I felt genuinely sorrowful for him, and I really liked throughout the film. Superman is in great peril. That's something that's been a real issue we've discussed with the character on film. He's so powerful; it's hard to make him vulnerable. Basically, the whole movie, he's vulnerable. He's in peril. He's having a hard time. I thought that was a great choice to really just make his skin look really shriveled up. And it wasn't just from the kryptonite, it was from the lack of solar power. Enjoyed the Pocket Universe escape quite a bit.
Yeah, they did a good job of curbing his power a bit. You know, the movie opens with him in defeat, and he has to be under a magnifying glass like an ant on an anthill in a way to recharge. And it's not just kryptonite that can beat him, it's many things. There's nanites that can take the air out of his lungs, and he could be potentially beaten to death if a character were strong enough to do that. So I appreciated that it's not just kryptonite that can beat him, it's other things. You know, he's vulnerable in many other ways. Yes, he's still the most powerful being that we've seen, but when you add in more dangers like that, it adds more tension, I think. And I will say this particular sequence is where I thought the movie got kind of strange. It got a little weird with Metamorpho. You mentioned that he gets stripped down to basically just a floating head and this weird alien baby that he's protecting of his. The background is also kind of aesthetically strange. You know, it's very alien there. I felt like they were taking a lot of risks in this sequence, and I still enjoyed it, but it was not my favorite. And also, I thought that this could be potentially off-putting to a lot of casual viewers.
The final action scene, Metropolis Mayhem. This was good. Might have been my least favorite though. And I just think again I think it's more of a function of just this is what we expect now, right? Is like we got to have the one big battle at the end of the movie. The whole city's in peril. It wasn't bad by any means, but I just think that for a movie that I felt had a lot of surprises and subverted, as we discussed, the mythology around the character, it was a little bit cliche just to have a big fight scene at the end. That being said, the big reveal about Ultraman, aka the hammer of Baravia, being Superman's clone, really worked for me. And my girlfriend Sarah, who we saw this film with, I thought brought up a great point when we were discussing on the drive home that the theme of the movie, in some respects, is his alienness versus his humanness. He literally had to kill the alien part of him. Ultraman was basically pure alien Superman, and he had to destroy that part of him in order to become the hero by the end of the movie. I thought that was a really cool way to connect to that theme. It's quite clever. I thought the fight scene was cool, but again, I think it's maybe just a function of the nature of superhero films that we all know it's going to lead to a big battle at the end and the city's going to be coming apart. Was my least favorite, but that's on a scale of all of them were good.
Yeah, I feel like it's the most forgettable of the action sequences. I honestly trying to sit here think about what actually happened at the end of the movie is I'm kind of struggling to do so. I forgot about the Ultraman sequence, but as you were talking about it, it was coming back into my mind. And to your point, and to Sarah's point, right after that is when he says to Lex that his humanity and the fact that he can be forgetful and the fact that he can make mistakes and the fact that he can be human is what is his greatest power. So I think that that was a good reflection on that sentiment. But yeah, that sequence and like the city splitting apart, which felt very Lego Batman to me. We saw that at the end of Lego Batman, where Gotham City is literally being split apart, by the brick, and then comes back together as soon as the rift is closed. It's just automatically everything kind of automatically heals itself. I thought was kind of lame, and then they're cutting back and forth between what's happening in Metropolis and what's happening in Baravia. Baravia? Is that the name of the country? And
Mm-hmm.
we see the Justice Gang have their heroic moment in that country because Superman can't make it there. And it's a lot of spinning plates kind of all happening at the same time. And like you said, it's the very cliche climax to a superhero movie that we've seen many times before. And so, yeah, I think that this is kind of the most forgettable part of the movie was the last 30 minutes.
Next category, best non-action scene. I'm just going to list these and then we'll kind of talk about which one is your favorite. First up, Superman interview. We alluded to it earlier. Lois Lane wants to get an exclusive with Superman because she's tired of Clark Kent scooping her. I thought that was a clever little bit, but also a really great way to, again, show these characters and who they are as people. She has a lot of ethics there in terms of you're on the record. No, that doesn't count. You never said off the record, that kind of stuff. I really appreciated that. Next one, Love Nest Confession. This is where Superman tells Lois that he loves her, and they kind of are going through their things, going through their feelings, trying to work it out while this alien fight is going on in the background. Pocket universe problems. This is kind of a catch all for the sequences inside the pocket universe with Metamorpho and the other characters in there. And then finally, Return to Smallville. This is, I think, the emotional center of the film where Superman's dad gives him a pep talk. Quite a stirring speech, in my opinion. I thought that was a really touching and humane way to kind of put it as far as parents and their roles to their children and what they can and should expect from them. I think these were all excellent scenes. They added a lot to the film. Mike, which one was your favorite?
All good scenes for sure. I said it earlier, but the interview scene is definitely my favorite non-action scene because it flips that stereotype of Lois just being in such awe of interviewing Superman and she's already in love with him and she's not doing that here. She's asking the hard questions right away. Followed closely, I think, by the Smallville, what did you call it? The Smallville break?
Return to Smallville.
Return to Smallville. Okay, thank you. And I like that scene because it gave Jonathan Kent, Pa Kent, a sequence to show his emotional center and his moral compass for Clark and what he needs to do. And I was really hoping for something like that because the way that Jonathan and Martha Kent are introduced in the movie feels like such a stereotype or such a cliche of these simple farmland folk. They're she's shouting into the telephone of like, "Oh, Pa said this, make sure that you do that." And I was kind of rolling my eyes at that scene. I was like, "Oh no, they're reducing Pa and Ma Kent to idiots here." But that scene brought it back where we see that they may be simple, but at least they're the emotional center that Clark needs to be a good person and to have that upright moral upbringing to his childhood. So I think that's a very close second.
For me, I'm gonna go with Love Nest Confession. I actually thought I loved the interview sequence. I think you just summed up the Smallville sequence really well. But for me, this kind of captured all of what I really loved about the film, which was humor, cool visual, a fun visual palette with this big battle going on behind them, and it's just kind of incidental on the screen without ever, they never did a cutaway. I thought that was a very clever thing. I feel like most directors, right, would have at least cut away to the actual battle a couple times and then maybe cut back. It just all exists in the background of the scene, so you can kind of listen to what they're discussing in the foreground and then kind of see what's going on in the background all at once. I thought it was a very clever, very cool way to again kind of underscore the themes around this is a world where, yeah, sure, an alien entity might pop up in the middle of Metropolis and it's really no big deal. They got it. We'll take care of it. His confession there. This is the scene too where he's like, "I'm punk rock," and she's like, "You're not punk rock." Thought that was a great line. So I'm gonna go
He's
with
definitely
love.
not, by the way.
No, he's totally not punk rock at all. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Love Nest Confession for my favorite non-action scene. Next up, we got to talk about Death and Destruction. I'm curious your thoughts on this one. So they really made a point, I thought, of showing at the end. I think that's really where most of this comes. I mean, you're going to have a couple casualties, right, with the kaiju battle, maybe a dozen or so, but that seems to be just kind of the cost of business living in Metropolis in this universe. Really, the big death and destruction would come from the final sequence, specifically these skyscrapers tipping over on a bridge. The camera follows the woman in the car. She gets away, but I gotta think, man, like there's got to be hundreds of people dead, right? I'm not sure if I'm going to go thousands, but I feel that probably hundreds of people died in this movie. What are your thoughts?
I was thinking the same thing, and probably I thought that was that not in the kaiju fight with the skyscrapers toppling over?
No, that was at the very end in the
Okay.
Metropolis Mayhem. Yeah.
I would imagine that during the kaiju fight as well, that there was some sequences going on. Even the opening fight with the Hammer of Baravia, he uses heat vision and it like completely blows in the window of that floor of the building. And I was like, there's got to be some injured people, at least injured people in there with broken glass, stuck in their face. But yeah, those skyscrapers falling over definitely accounted for some casualties and fatalities, I would say. Not to mention the war in Baravia happening. I'm sure that there was some misplaced gunfire happening there. Maybe a trigger happy soldier might have been mowing down some civilians over there. And I can tell you off the bat, I can think of one specific fatality that was pretty questionable to me while watching it. And I don't think a lot of people actually clocked it or maybe even considered it a win. But Hawk Girl very specifically murders the president of a foreign nation in this movie. And I was pretty shocked at that. I was like, okay, well, first of all, she's a murderer, and we're okay with that. I can't imagine the political ramifications of something like this happening. Yes, I know he's a bad guy, quote unquote. He's invading other countries. It would be like if a person just dropped Vladimir Putin from the top of a roof and let him fall to the ground and splatter. But there would be quite a bit of backlash to her character for allowing this to happen. And frankly, it again was another reason I was like, I don't like this character and I would remove her from the movie. I don't like her being a murderer.
Yeah, I don't know enough about her character in the comics to say where her morals and ethics lie in terms of murder relative to Superman and Batman, two characters who famously refuse to cross that hard line. That being said, you got a guy in your arms and you're a hot girl and you're flying around and oops, he accidentally slips. Like, was it murder or did he just slip out of her hands? I mean, we know the truth, but I think you could probably cover up that conspiracy pretty easily. All right, let's move on to our new category, good guys and bad guys. So this is where we're going to shout out supporting characters who we thought were good and bad. So let's start with the good guy. Mike, who is your good guy of Superman?
My favorite supporting character is probably Mr. Terrific. Like I said, he was a kind of a breath of fresh air. I feel like I'm probably better versed than the casual viewer in DC characters, and this was someone that I had seen before, but again, didn't really know his power set. So I was really glad to see a fresh character come on screen and was genuinely surprised at his action sequence that he had where he had his little drones kind of taking everybody out and creating a bubble shield for him and Lois and analyzing, where Superman had walked to and things like that. Like he's pretty handy to have around. I think that I really enjoyed his sequences, and I don't know who the actor is offhand. I don't know his name, but I felt like he did a great job at delivering those lines. He's very tries to be stoic, but it's also played for laughs and a lot of what he says. And I think his character worked really well all around for me.
Yeah, he would be my number two. I echo everything you just said. Also, got to shout out Crypto, as we discussed. I think he's a great addition to the film, and I
He's a
think
good boy.
yeah, as both of us as dog lovers, you love to see it. You love to see the dog representation in superhero films. But my good guy is quite literally Guy Gardner. I thought Nathan Fillion, he's always bringing the heat. He's always funny. He's always a welcome presence. He's a dude that will show up for one quick little cameo in something and just be completely memorable. He has a funny little part in the Suicide Squad, and I really liked his character. I thought his humor added something at the end. Metamorpho, he's being all snobby, and then Metamorpho compliments the name, and he's like, "You're in." Um, the bad haircut, which is very comic accurate. Just really, really liked him. I thought that was just an awesome performance from Nathan Fillion, and he's someone who I will always enjoy seeing on screen. In terms of bad guys, so I honestly I didn't really have one. I mean, let me put it this way. This is a character I like the least, but I didn't have anyone I felt like was overtly bad. My pick is going to be the engineer. That's the woman who has the nanobots, I guess, injected in her blood. I didn't think she was bad necessarily. She was the one character where, with the actor, I was just kind of not entirely buying her in that part. I thought maybe they needed someone who's just like a little huskier lady, like just a little more tough and badass. Again, not horrible though. So I'll be honest, Mike, I'm struggling to find a lot of things to criticize in this film. I thought pretty much across the board it was excellent. So that's my bad guy pick, but it's more just least favorite guy pick. I can probably guess your answer already based on previous comments, but break us off. Who's your least favorite supporting character?
Yeah, it's definitely Hot Girl. She's number one on my list to just, if we had to cut some time from this movie, get rid of her. The engineer, I would say she's the muscle for Lex, so she serves a purpose, but yeah, she wasn't necessarily great or memorable. Her haircut was kind of stupid. Her powers were kind of dull. Her costume was not cool. It just was black latex. I was like, this is what you're wearing while you're in the middle of Antarctica, South Pole or whatever. I don't know. It's she wasn't great either, but yeah, I would say hot girl. We can throw her to the curb.
So I expected to have a lot more callbacks to the previous Superman films in this movie. And I got to say, there really wasn't a ton. The one I would potentially call out a little bit was the fight on the baseball field, which obviously maybe has some echoes from the scene in Superman Returns with the plane crash. Overall, though, I was pleasantly, I would say, surprised by the lack of callbacks. I think they were really wanted intentionally to go into a new direction. What were some of your callbacks, if you clocked any?
Oh, well, are you saying that Jerk Superman wasn't a callback?
All right, so yeah, I guess we're in spoiler territory, so you've already seen this film, or you maybe aren't, and you're one of those people. But I personally felt an extreme sense of validation to see the very last line of the movie in the second post-credit sequence was him literally saying, "I can be a kind of a jerk sometimes." I thought that was totally awesome and validating based on our discussion points around Superman 3. Let's go, James Gunn. Great minds think alike. Jerk Superman. I'm here for it.
He was a jerk for sure in that movie. No, I think there weren't a lot of callbacks either that I can think of. Mostly it was musical. I mean, they reiterated the John Williams score and remixed it in such a great way that it was effective and still kind of felt a little fresh. But it was like, okay, it's too good to move away from. That score embodies Superman so well that we can't just invent something new. I mean, Hans Zimmer created a pretty great theme for Man of Steel that I thought was pretty effective as well. But I mean, come on, if you're gonna do a Superman movie, how can you not go with the John Williams score? So that was a great callback.
Yeah, that actually leads to another point I wanted to bring up. A surprising lack of pop music cues in this film from James Gunn. That I think is one of the hallmarks of obviously the Guardians of the Galaxy films, as well as the Suicide Squad. There's a ton of needle drops throughout. This had, and we stayed through the credits, I think 4 songs that were licensed from elsewhere. One of them was the Mighty Crabjoys. But yeah, I love that Teddy Bears song with Iggy Pop. I'm a punk rocker. And I could not believe that Mr. Terrific sequence set to the Noah and the Whale 2005 twee hit, 5 years, a song that has long been a guilty pleasure of mine. Brought a huge smile to my face to see that incorporated in the movie. But again, I think James Gunn showed a lot of maturation as a filmmaker in this, and the lack of pop music scores and the emphasis on original score, which was good, if not completely memorable to me, really kind of demonstrated some of his growth as a filmmaker. Last thing before we get into our final categories here, Mike, secret identity. So this is something we've discussed throughout the season, is always a topic of discussion among Superman fans. How do people around him not realize that Clark Kent is Superman? We got a canonical explanation that apparently James Gunn has been saying is directly in the comic book canon. The glasses that Clark Kent wears have a magical quality to make people only see him who you want him to be or something. But in any event, it turns out the glasses are kind of hypnotizing to people or something. I'll be totally honest, didn't love it, didn't need it. I feel like, again, if you're Christopher Reeve, if you're talented at playing both parts, you can pull it off convincingly, despite the fact that I think all of us would recognize someone with glasses on as being the person that we know in a slightly different haircut. So we get a canonical explanation for it. I didn't love it. What were your thoughts on the magic glasses?
I didn't need it either. Like you said, if as long as the actor is talented enough and can hunch his shoulders and put on a Kermit the Frog voice, that's all we really need. It's not about trying to hide Superman, it's about presenting a different persona, and that just requires acting chops.
Now it's time for what some people have told us is their favorite part of the show, a little section we call I've Got Questions.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
Questions. Questions that need answering.
It just raises too many questions.
Too many questions. There's too many questions. There's just too many. I'll ask the questions.
I'll be honest, I don't have any questions. I felt that the story logic was extremely sound in this movie. I mean, I have a question about who was this first metahuman that appeared back in 1725, but that's not really what we do with I've Got Questions. I've Got Questions is more about like, that's dumb, that doesn't make sense. I'm sure there's some things I'm missing, but again, I really thought this movie was excellent and did really adhere to its own internal story logic. I have a feeling you're about to disabuse me of that notion, so please tell me, Mike, what
I
are your questions?
I got some questions. So right out the gate, we learn that Superman lost his first fight, and then we see him land in the middle of Antarctica. Was he trying to aim himself to get close to the Fortress of Solitude? Because to me, it felt like a Rise of Skywalker situation where he just randomly lands on the planet right next to where he needs to go next. Remember when they used the dagger to line up? And I was like, okay, he calls for Crypto to take him home. He's literally 300 yards away from where the Fortress of Solitude is.
First of all, get that dang comparison out of your mouth. I won't hear that blasphemy. Okay. I took it basically as he was getting his butt kicked. He bailed from the fight, flew as far as he could, almost made it back to the Fortress of Solitude, but just totally was beat up and bruised, couldn't quite make it, and landed in the snow just outside of home base.
So then to that point, we have now established that in his fortress he has a giant magnifying glass that can speed up his healing process and get him back into the fight in a matter of minutes, right? He later in the film is severely damaged from kryptonite poisoning, and Lois throws him into Mr. Terrific's spaceship. She decides to fly him to Smallville, Kansas. Wouldn't he tell her, "Hey, I have a healing station at my fortress. Fly me to the South Pole right now instead, so I can heal up and get back in this fight immediately"?
Okay, that's a fair point, and I'm gonna guess that this has to do with time differences and that he knew it was nighttime in Antarctica at the Fortress of Solitude, and therefore, what's even the point? It's gonna be sunrise in Smallville in like an hour, so let's just hurry up and get out there, and then I'll feel better in the morning. That's
I'm gonna I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that
all
one.
right. So you're 0 for 2 here. I've explained away both of your questions so far. Keep them coming, bro. I'm gonna
All right,
battle these away like Superman fighting a kaiju. Let's go.
this one is more emotional based, and you may not be able to tell me, but does Lois actually love him? Because she says specifically to Mr. Terrific that she was considering breaking up with him. She laments at one point that he's kind of weird and maybe is not her vibe in a way. She still decides to help free him, of course, and then she witnesses him save the world. But there's really nothing that happens from a story standpoint that convinces her that she should love this man, that she should be with him. There's nothing that changes her mind, as far as I could tell. So why does she decide that she still loves him? And you know what? I'm going to say it back to you that I do love you as well.
Okay, again, strong disagree here. I think the
Okay.
key to all of this was her tossed off line. This always happens. She says that to him because for her, she has a construct that I am not worthy of love or whatever issues go on. As soon as they start hitting some bumps in her relationship, she just bails. She's like, this always happens. I'm over it. So it really, the story arc for me is she struggles with opening herself up to the emotional vulnerability that's required of relationships, and once she almost loses Superman in the Pocket universe, only then does she realize how important this man is to her.
Ooh, that's
He's
good.
already shown his vulnerability by saying, I love you. And that isn't oftentimes a kind of a polarizing moment in a lot of relationships where maybe one partner says it and the other one is like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready to say it or whatever. It can kind of freak some people out. I speak from personal experience. So I actually completely believed it. And I thought that, yes, she absolutely does love him. And by the end, you know, I fully believe that she was sincere and authentic in her comments. And I thought her growth in terms of accepting the love that he wants to give her was a lovely story arc, in my opinion.
All right, all right. I can accept that. It's only been one time I've seen this movie, so forgive me if I didn't absorb everything on the
It's
first viewing.
first reactions, baby. All
But I
right,
do have a few more,
let's go.
if I may. If I may. And this one might be a little bit of a fastball for you. So, why didn't Lex just kill Crypto? Why bother putting him in a cage and tormenting him with virtual super squirrels when it later is his downfall and Crypto is the one who kind of saves the day in a lot of respects? Why not just kill him? This is something that obviously a lot of villains do where they have an opportunity to kill a hero and they just don't. And it's a comic book trope. Can you
Yeah,
explain that to me?
absolutely. I can explain it, Mike. Similar to the way that Superman, as established in Superman Returns, you cannot break his skin, right? Like you shoot him in the eyeball and the bullet just collapses against the eyeball, right? Krypto's from Krypton too. So he similarly has tough hide, basically impenetrable skin, can't be damaged like the way a normal dog might be.
Throw him in the
And
cell with Metamorpho, who can create kryptonite and weaken him for you. You have a guy that can create kryptonite.
but I mean, really? Like you're going to go that far? Like I think his whole point was more to torture something that Superman loved. I think there's another explanation for you, even if the last one might not be canonically correct. The idea wasn't, I want to kill this dog. I hate this dog. The idea is, you know what would really punish Superman and really make him suffer is to see me torturing a pet that he loves. That will really bother him. So, yeah, I mean, again, would I be more bothered by my dog getting murdered versus my dog being slightly tortured and then I can save him?
Not
I,
Terrence.
I,
No,
no one would ever torture our dog. He's the best dog, though. He's the
he is.
best. So this is a preposterous comparison, but yeah, that's my explanation. He knew it would be more painful for Superman, who is a squirrel lover. Even he loves pets so much and animals, he will save squirrels even
He
to
just loves
see
all
a
life.
dog.
He's on the side
Yeah,
of life. So,
to
all
see a dog being tortured like that was cruel and unusual. I loved it.
right, I'm gonna give you one more for just for the sake of time because I do have a few, but I'm gonna wrap it up here.
Okay.
And this is my big one. Does Superman actually beat anyone by himself in this movie? As far as I could tell, every single fight that he participates in, he cannot win, and someone else has to help him out to win. You have the movie opens with him losing the fight against the Hammer of Baravia. He has the big kaiju battle where the Justice Squad has to come in and help him. We have the clone version of himself that he fights where he's about to be murdered by Ultraman and Crypto comes in and saves the day. That gives him an opportunity to gain the upper hand. Maybe Lex, I guess, but again, that's something that even Crypto comes and has that stinger, joke where he throws him around like the Hulk at the end of Avengers. So I don't think that for someone who's quote unquote the most powerful man in the universe, our most powerful champion that we are supposed to be rooting for, he kind of seems like he just can't do anything on his own. What are your thoughts?
You make a great point, Mike. I can't dispute that. Now, I'm not sure if this qualifies under I've got questions and more under just observations, but yeah, you are 100% right. I guess he does kind of individually beat Ultraman, but that is with the assist of Crypto to take out the orbs that Lex is using to
He's
administer the
about to be
commands.
killed by Ultraman, and
Yeah.
Crypto intercepts.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think you're right. But again, I think thematically that connects back to this idea of we're all in it together. We're a united humanity. I can't do this on my own, even though I'm the most powerful being on planet Earth. Even Superman needs help. I guess you would summarize as saying. So that's a fair point you raise. However, I do think it's still connects back thematically, and I am undefeated in the question section of our show. So let's move on to my favorite section, which is what's it really all about? And Mike, let me tell you, I had so many thoughts on this. I could go long. I will try to keep this as short as possible, but I do want to point out a couple things. First of all, we noted the lack of explicit callbacks in terms of scenes or things like that. However, thematically, this film connects to the exact themes that we have outlined in every single previous Superman movie of our first season. First of all, the first film, grand spectacle brought to the big screen, bringing a comic book to life. I thought this movie was exceptional in that mark and in that respect. It genuinely felt like a comic book film. I thought that James Gunn has been doing a lot of interviews. He's mentioned that because Guardians of the Galaxy is in a lot of ways more Star Wars than it is superheroes, it's his first superhero movie that he's directed. I think, again, yes, I see the skepticism on your face. However, I do think that the spectacle of comic books brought to life was very much on display in this film. The second movie we talked about, sacrifices and vulnerability required for love. It connects back to this last point I just brought up about Lois and even Superman. They have to be open and vulnerable at the very end. Superman, his speech to Lex, I'm scared sometimes. I'm just like you. I have all that. There's a lot of vulnerability that he shows. I thought that connected back to the theme of the second film. Ironically, the most explicit thematic callbacks were for Superman 3 and Superman 4. As we discussed, Superman 3 is about the dangers of powerful megalomaniacal billionaires and the damage that they can do all the way across the globe. That is actually what Lex is really plotting for in this film. He's very similar to the guy whose name we always forget because he was so not memorable from Superman 3.
Not Lex Luthor.
The dime store Lex Luthor from
Yeah,
Superman
exactly.
3. So I thought that was very interesting that that connected to the theme of Superman 3 and Superman 4, the unintended consequences of unilateral geopolitical decisions on the part of superheroes and the unscrupulous media ethics. These were really explicit themes in this film. I mean, it connected
Yeah.
to all four of those movies. Now, you have to squint a little bit more to see how it connects to Superman Returns and Supergirl. If anything, I thought they were kind of inverting those. You can say, as we discussed, there's themes of regret and legacy in Superman Returns. And I think certainly legacy is a big part of this. Which family are you going to choose? Is it going to be, your human family or your Kryptonian family? So that kind of connects. Supergirl, you called out, is basically the theme is like girls are dumb, and it just there wasn't a whole lot of theme, I would say, in the original Supergirl. That being said, one thing I really enjoyed, as we discussed briefly, the character of Eve Tessmacher in this film. She's this self-absorbed, I'm just always posting selfies on social, but actually she's secretly taking pictures of all of Lex Luthor's plans. Like, it was kind of inversion of the theme in Supergirl, where it's like you think you're dealing with shallow and superficial women, but actually she's way more clever and shrewd than anyone gives credit for. I thought that was
it
quite clever.
intentional? I thought she was just happenstance, like that she took pictures of what was behind her.
No,
It
I
was
read it.
intentional.
Yeah, that was exactly how I read it. I think someone says that, like, oh, she's actually a genius, and or something like that. But yeah,
I
I
thought,
very much took it
yeah,
that it was totally intentional what she was doing.
okay.
Yeah, I took it that way. So anyway, I thought it was very interesting the way that the themes of this movie touched on all of the previous Superman themes, even if there wasn't any specific callbacks in terms of plotting and things like that. Now, I have a lot of thoughts about the character of Lex Luthor and the overall meta arc regarding James Gunn and the controversy around right wing media. As you may know, I'm not sure if you do, there's been a bit of controversy in the lead up to this film because James Gunn made a benign comment about how Superman is an immigrant. And in the year 2025, apparently, select corners of right wing media have decided, even mentioning the fact, self evident fact, that Superman is an immigrant is seen as liberal coded or a shot at the right wing. Despite, again, the fact this is, I mean, it's part of the text of Superman's origin story. He is an immigrant from another planet. You can't, it's not a political thing for James Gunn to say that. He's been very outspoken in his liberal beliefs in the past, but I did not think that he's done anything in the press tour to try to create controversy. Nevertheless, before anyone had even seen this movie, Fox News was labeling it as super woke and trying to disparage the, let's call it, thematic integrity or the apolitical nature of things in the film. I believe that a lot of this has to do with the residual leftover feelings around the controversy of the right wing trying to get him canceled from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, when old tweets of his had surfaced and all of a sudden they were clutching their pearls, pretending they were so outraged when in fact they just didn't like him for criticizing President Trump. That being said, I have a feeling that hardcore MAGA people will very much not like this film because Lex Luthor is Elon Musk. He is a brilliant but insecure and envious technocrat who uses his business acumen and intelligence to pull the strings of geopolitical power with a literal army of monkeys doing his bidding on social media. Not only that, he uses the media to paint a specific narrative that, while technically true, ignores the larger context in order to demonize and stigmatize and spread fear about those who are different. This film is about embracing one's humanity, flaws and all, doing the right thing, no matter how seemingly small, even saving a squirrel, regardless of your political alliances or consequences. Now, Mike, these are genuinely nonpartisan themes, but if they strike a nerve with you and make you feel uncomfortable based on your current political alliances, it may be time to take a step back and examine the bigger question of who you are as a person and the principles that you choose to live by or sacrifice. I do not want to make this podcast political. I have friends who support our current president. I have neighbors who are great people that are very kind, who are different political affiliations than myself. Nevertheless, I did feel that the themes were fairly explicit in this movie in terms of some of those messages and how they relate to our current world.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah, this is something that the themes are just human in nature, and it's not something that should ruffle your feathers no matter which way you lean. But I'm shocked to hear you say this after Superman 3, where we discussed how it was only in the 70s or excuse me, it was only in 79 that that
Yeah,
the themes of billionaires and presidents and things like that. You were very explicit at that time, if I
you know,
recall.
Mike, a lot's changed in the last couple months, I gotta say. Elon had a falling out with our president, and so that kind of changed my views. But no, I felt like this was not even really subtextual. I thought it was right there on the surface, and yeah, I'm genuinely curious to see. As we discussed in Superman 4, I don't like art that's like left is good, right is bad. This movie is definitely not that. It's definitely not.
Yeah.
But when you just literally look at the characters, at some of the themes and the plotting, what happens, who these people remind you of more than anything, I think it's pretty clear that there's going to be some feathers ruffled with this, and I'm good with it. All right, well, that brings us to our final category, recommendations. Mike, why don't you kick us off with recommendations from Superman?
Sure, I got a couple. I'll start with my comic book, and we originally had talked about All-Star Superman in the first episode of this podcast as one of your recommendations, and that was something that was heavily looked at by James Gunn and by David Cornsweet. Is that it? Cornswet. Okay. I want to
Yeah.
make sure I'm saying it right.
David Corn
Uh,
Sweat.
David Cornswet for the inspirations for this movie. But another one that David had specifically called out was, I thought, very interesting and one of my favorites and considered an all-time classic, Superman for All Seasons by Jeff Loeb from 1998. That was the other inspiration for this movie. It's kind of told through the course of like 4 seasons during his early, kind of adolescence in life. And it shows that it's the person and not the powers that make Superman a hero. And I think that if you're coming into this movie as a newcomer, that might be a great place for you to start if you're just looking to get some more Superman content and don't really know where to start. So, Superman for All Seasons. That's by the way, that's a take on the classic Oscar-winning movie A Man for All Seasons. They twisted that title a little bit to apply to Superman, and it's a great movie and a great book. And then for my movie recommendation, obviously we have the great Nathan Fillion in a very big role in this movie. I'm a huge fan of him. But in addition to him, Mark, do you know who was the voice of Gary the Robot?
I do not, Mike.
Gary the Robot is voiced by the great Alan Tudyk. And if you don't know the name, you definitely know his face. You've seen him before. He's Resident Alien. He's that character. He's Steve the Pirate in Dodgeball. But I'm calling him out specifically because him and Nathan Fillion together were in a great movie called Serenity. And Serenity is the movie extension of the Firefly TV show that was created by Joss Whedon, another great comic creator and comic movie creator. And Serenity, I think, is just a fun sci-fi. If you're looking for like a kind of a Star Wars or even a Guardians of the Galaxy kind of feel, Serenity is something that I would highly recommend, and it's still holds up.
Love to hear it. I actually interviewed Alan Tudyk a couple times for Resident Alien with my job at Dish.com. It was on actually Sling.com. You could probably still find it on Sling social media if you check, but very nice guy. It's also a great show if you haven't seen it. Resident Alien, nice mix of sci-fi and humor. So great recommendation there. As I mentioned before, I'm not as big of a DC Comics reader, so I actually don't have a comic book recommendation. But in terms of my film recommendation, I've got to go with my favorite film of 2024, which is co-starring Nicholas Hoult. That film was Nosferatu. Mike, I actually saw you immediately after I watched that movie, and we probably discussed it for a solid 30 minutes. I absolutely love that film. I think Robert Eggers, the writer-director behind it, is one of the best filmmakers to come out in the last 10 years for sure. He's the man behind The Witch. He also did The Northman, which is a great kind of action-adventure movie with fantastical elements. He did The Lighthouse, which is a truly strange and bizarre horror comedy almost. I mean, it's a very unique tone. Nosferatu is his remake of the classic silent film from back in the day. I had really no relationship to any of the iterations of Nosferatu prior to seeing this, which is partly why I think I liked it so much. I think other people who maybe had seen that and the 70s version may have, felt like, okay, we've been here before. But for me, felt very original. It's a very unique riff on basically Dracula. It's very similar to the novel of Bram Stoker's Dracula, but amazing visual, amazing production design. Yet another great performance from Skarsgård, who's quickly becoming one of the kings of horror film. I thought Lily Rose Depp was quite good, despite not really knowing too much about her, but she did an excellent job. Willem Dafoe is great. As I mentioned, Nicholas Hoult does a great job in a pretty juicy role. I thought Nosferatu was the best film of 2024, so that's my recommendation off of Superman.
That's a great pick. I love that movie. And yeah, Skarsgård is very quickly approaching someone like Bela Lugosi for the champion belt of movie monsters. Nicholas Hoult is incredible in that role. It's a great movie if you haven't seen it. Great pick, Mark.
Thanks, buddy. Loved it. And I loved Superman 2. I know we disagreed a little bit, it sounds like, but I think we both, I mean, Mike, we can say this is a really solid entry in the superhero canon.
Definitely.
Again, I think it could elevate to classic level. We'll find out in a few years' time when we come back to revisit it. But in the meantime, we appreciate you guys tuning in, not only for this episode, but for our entire first season. If you're just listening to this one, please go back and check out our episodes on the original Christopher Reeves movies, as well as the 2006 Superman Returns and Supergirl. Very much a mixed bag across those films, but hopefully you'll enjoy us lavishing praise on some, making some jokes about the others. Please like and subscribe. That really means a lot. The support has been tremendous from our first season. This has been so much fun, Mike. Really looking forward to many years of discussing superhero films with you moving forward.
Yeah, this has been an absolute blast. It's been truly a pleasure, and I can't wait for what comes next. I'm really excited for season 2. We've got some great surprises in store, and I think it's going to be even better than season 1, if I had to say so. So stay tuned.
Be sure to subscribe so you can hear our new episodes coming this fall on the 90s Batman movies, Michael Keaton, the rest. The others. We're going to save the Nolan ones. We're going to save the Ben Affleck ones, the Pattinson ones. There's been a lot of Batmans, but we're going back to the original Batman on screen, Michael Keaton. Stay tuned for season 2 of Superhero Cinema Club. Thanks so much for listening.
Superhero Cinema Club is hosted by Mark Schiff and me, Mike Carnes. Produced by Mark Schiff. Editing by Mike Carnes. Original music provided by Chris Carnes. Find him on Spotify. Be sure to follow us on social media. You can find us at Superhero Cinema Club, and don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a review. Join us next time as we dive into another epic adventure from the world of superhero cinema.